very on the ball with that, and it can be really a huge nuisance for someone who's invested so much gas into a Mutalisk harass. But this Blink Stalker coming in now, really shutting down this Mutalisk harassment, which can just peck away at you for hours and hours and hours. And I imagine Deth's going to keep it up, see if he can bounce off a few stray buildings, and he does. Goes for that assimilator, just working through all the shields now. But now we're seeing those blinks coming on, more free hits, 1 or 2 Mutalisks getting super low there. So Deth needs to watch it. He can't weaken those Mutalisks too much. He does have a bunch more warping in at his base right now. Hasn't got Hive Tech online yet, so I would imagine that he's probably going to think about trying to saturate this third base when it's online and switch into a Hive Tech to really get the next tier of units, because Pinder is expanding at the same time, so they've got the similar mentality. And we do see Deth trying to take that fourth, just trying to kick ahead in terms of economy right now, because he does see this expansion of Pinder's, and there's not much he can do to stop it, considering how well Pinder's been defending and the composition of his units against those mutas.
Always a sign of a good Protoss player. He has an observer sitting right on top of this Mutalisk army, so he knows exactly what's going on right now. So it's so useful with the scouting. He was able to scout the Spire, and so useful to really deny the Mutalisk harass. So really great play by Pinder so far with the Blink Stalkers. He's got these Immortals now for the heavy ground force. Getting his expansion down now actually too. So at the same time as Deth has right now. So they're very even, although of course Zerg need that extra expansion really to be safe. And yeah, I like Pinder's position so far with these High Templars now on the field. So Archons can do so much damage. Also, if he chooses to go that way, but we'll have to see what Deth does with all these Mutalisks on the field. They haven't really paid for their worth just yet.
Yeah, interesting choice from Pinder. He looks like he's almost going to push out right now, but that Psystorm resource is only at 50%. You would imagine that he's going to time his attack to go in once this Psystorm resource finishes, because otherwise his Templars are only going to be able to feedback or turn into Archons, which is not going to be all that damaging at this point. So I'd expect that Pinder's going to wait for Psystorm to come online, and then we're going to see him push out and really, if he can get a good few couple of storms off with his limited number of only 4 Templars, but if he can get a decent number of storms off and use that effectively, he should be able to shred this composition, especially if he catches too many Mutalisks with a storm. It can be really devastating for Deth. So I would expect that now that this storm is finished, he's going to push out, but remains to be seen what Pinder's movement's going to be as he takes his 4th base. So he's really doing well in the economic stakes, keeping level with Deth, who is looking to harass with his mutas right now, sending out a bunch. But Pinder's in pretty good shape. Pinder is at the same time pushing out himself, so he's got to be careful that he doesn't get caught out of position here, because these mutas are in pretty good position to harass. But no, Deth choosing to be cautious. Going to lose an Overlord, and will that supply cap him? Yes, it does. He's not supply blocked, but he's supply capped. But Deth, being the player he is, just gets an Overlord out just in time to keep that room up there. A little bit of unspent minerals there for Deth, but his economy is so huge. Pinder's spending a little bit more efficiently, but interesting shadow games going here. Deth does not want to engage in the open field, looking to try and find him on the ramp, and then he can position and get a nice concave outside his spine crawler. So a little bit of a standoff right now, as both players looking to engage in the exact same point, but neither one wanting to commit to the low ground. So interesting choice. It's just going to be a case of positioning and who can reinforce the best at this point, because both players are microing pretty evenly. So it's just going to come down to Blink micro and Psystorm micro. We see these mutas coming in for this expansion, forcing Pinder to come defend. He's just taking the shots while he works on these buildings, realizing that that's the full army of Pinder, so he needs to pull those mutas back. He cannot afford to lose too many, because he's invested so heavily in them. He has this bunch of Pinder's army is now defending nicely in this tight side of bases, but he's got to be careful, because otherwise he's just going to trade half the map. And then Deth does not really want to fight a 200 versus 200 army there, because that will favor Pinder, and they're heading towards 200 supply cap right now, and this is not a good situation for Deth. And Pinder is keeping his minerals really well spent, whereas Deth is just massing them right now. So I imagine that Deth's going to really need to deny one of these expansions, because he's not going to want to fight an even 200 battle.
I know you'll like this, Seth. There's an Ultralisk Cavern on the field now with 5 Ultralisks on their way, so we're going to see some business. This is either going to be fantastic for Deth, or it's going to be terrible, so we'll have to see how he works out with this. largely just Zerglings and Roaches currently on the field for Deth, so we have to support it, of course, with these Mutalisks. But we have to see what these Ultralisks can do. He's being very diligent with these upgrades. He is actually, well, as far as the melee upgrades, he's actually been a bit slower, so we'll have to see how it works out. Of course, when they're fully upgraded, they do so much damage, but yeah, we'll have to see. You know, they're not the cheapest things in the world, so he has to make good use of them.
Yeah, it's always exciting to see raging, crazed, huge elephants rampaging all over the field, and they always do nasty things to these bunches of Protoss units. They just do so effectively against ground, and it's good to see they're making a resurgence now as opposed to when they were hacked on during beta, but some good changes there by Blizzard being made. These needs to be careful here for Deth. His army could be split in half by these Archons, and he's going to fight all these Stalkers on this round. This is much better positioning for Pinder, and Deth realizes it and pulls back. The Ultra Ling is a really good combination if you can get in open field there, and then numbers can really get past, but fighting on that ramp would have been devastating because the Archons could have just tanked while these Stalkers and Sentries go to work, and he could have thrown down a bunch of force fields and trapped him in the middle of these Psystorms. So that could have been potentially devastating for Deth, who is just being followed by this Observer by Pinder, which is hugely annoying, and we are seeing Pinder saying, alright, I'm going to fight you right here, and Pinder going to choose the terms of this engagement, taking on these Ultras right now. Deth realizing the situation and is just running for it. A bunch of free hits coming off for Deth here, but this unit composition really favors Pinder right now, and despite that Chitness plating upgrade finishing for Deth, he does not want to engage with just Ultralisks and Lings at this point. Considering that nice composition, he'll be vulnerable to Storms, which even though the Ultralisk can weather it in accompaniment with so much targetable damage from so many Stalkers, those Ultras won't last that long. So he needs to get these upgrades finished, which he's trying to get right now. They're just sitting at 2-1, so he's trying to finish 2-3. So it'll be interesting to find out where Deth exactly engages him. He's got to watch out. These Mutalisks are going to take some free hits. Just gets out of there in time. He looks like an open field engagement. This is much better for Deth, but these Archons surviving at the moment, trying to work on these Mutalisks, and there's the Psystorm going off on the Craze Ultras, but a little bit
oh no,
army being caught in these trees. He's being stormed in the trees here. It's a bit of a rumble in the jungle going on, and it's definitely favouring Pinder at this point. Not sure what Deth's answer is going to be. He's going to lose this expansion, and his minerals being dumped into more Ultras. 14 Ultralisks being produced right now, along with 28 Zerglings. So I'm really looking forward to this many Ultras getting involved in the fight, while we see beautiful force fielding there, completely cutting off Pinder's army while he takes down that expansion. So, and it's a bit of a miss hotkey there, rally point rather, of those Zerglings and Mutas going into the middle of Pinder's army, and you've always got to be careful about that, and just watch your rally points in the middle of a fight. But I'm looking forward to seeing this huge amount of Ultras which are just spawning out now. They take a long time to be produced, but while this is going on, Deth is losing expansions here, so this is a bad situation. He's going to be reduced to 3 base against a 4 base Pinder, who isn't mining yet, but he's now shepherding his drones. But it looks like Deth is moving in here, only got 3 Ultras and a bunch of Lings, getting a surround off on this Archon, but so many units attacking from the top. That's a lot of free hits to take on those Zerglings, so Pinder's going to need to group up with his forces. He has so many Ultras coming out at once. This is a huge group of Ultras. It's almost a herd of Ultras. There's just so many. And Pinder's been whittled down. Even though he's won those fights, his numbers are down here, and he's being sandwiched by these Ultras, which is nice. It's Rumble in the Jungle Mark II, but it looks like it's going to be better for Deth this time as these Ultras go to work. That cleave damage is just mincing through these Immortals, and only the Stalkers, and Deth is just loving it, as you see in chat there. That was Ultra Mayhem. I'm just surprised at how much damage they were able to do. That was beautiful execution there, and Pinder is in so much trouble. These Ultras are just going to go rampaging, so I'm not sure what Pinder's going to be able to do now.
There's these carriers that were being built this whole time, and they're going to be able to push these Ultralisks back for the meanwhile, of course, because those Ultralisks can't hit air. But the more important thing, as far as I'm concerned, is we are not very far away from a mothership if Pinder wants to go that way. The fleet beacon is down, so I'm rooting for that. Meanwhile, you know, Pinder doing the smart thing and maybe getting more